You might want to remind people to mute themselves at the beginning.
Yeah. Thanks to everyone who's already arrived. Really appreciate you. Thank you for being prompt. And we're gonna start promptly at 10 o'clock. And in case we don't do it, if everyone could mute themselves who is not speaking, that would be awesome. Oh, I see you, Mary. Well, I'm glad that you came here for as much as you could be here. And we're going to start right on time, so you will at least not be missing, you know, as much as you would be. We're also going to share this on Facebook so that people who can't get in will be able to see it that way. Well, it's 10 o'clock and we are going to begin. So first of all, I want to say good morning, everyone. It's Valentine's week. And when we think about Valentine's Day, it's usually something that's tied up with love and romance, hearts and flowers, and until this year, maybe having dinner out with a loved one. But the harsh reality is that domestic violence spikes at this time. Instead of celebrating true love, too many people are dealing with someone who wants to control them, batter, and abuse them. And right now, during the pandemic, people are trapped with their abuser in a way that adds to their terror and cuts off their means of escape. Economic instability, unsafe housing, neighborhood violence, lack of safe, stable childcare, and a lack of social support can increase stress and worsen already tenuous situations. The physical closing of schools and childcare facilities during the pandemic have added to the stress. Remote schooling is hard on everyone. The restrictions put in place for public health reasons to combat the spread of the virus have also made it more difficult to find emergency housing. Some shelters have reduced their capacity or shut down. Safe haven has been harder to find because of the pandemic. Friends and family who once would generously open their doors to help out a loved one are fearful of letting their generosity let in the virus. Love Shouldn't Hurt is my annual campaign near Valentine's Day each February to honor those survivors who are doing advocacy work to educate the public about domestic abuse. My Love Shouldn't Hurt campaign is also about highlighting resources available for survivors of domestic violence or abuse. According to an article in this past December's New England Journal of Medicine, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 10 men have experienced intimate partner abuse. State's Attorney Braveboy has been instrumental in 2 important initiatives to bring domestic abusers to justice. One is a new Maryland law that passed last year and took effect October 1st that makes strangulation a first-degree felony assault. She championed that bill and worked to convince the General Assembly to pass it. She argued successfully that trying to strangle someone is much more brutal than the misdemeanor it used to be, and it should be a felony. We'll hear from State's Attorney Braveboy soon, but first I want to personalize the issue of strangulation. Our first speaker is someone who I've known as a public servant and elected official. She's a mother of 3 sons. She's a veteran, having served in the U.S. Army for 8 years. She received a number of awards during her time in the Army and today is a member of the National Association of Black Veterans. She served as a proud union member and is the shop steward for AFSCME Local 2898. Stella Hargrove serves on the Fairmount Heights Town Council, where I worked with her closely this past year, helping to feed people during the pandemic. And unfortunately, she's experienced domestic violence and was strangled by her ex-husband. Councilmember Hargrove survived and uses her experiences to help others escape abusive relationships. Please meet Stella Hargrove. Stella, we can't hear you. There you go.
Oh, sorry.
You're on.
I'm unmuted.
You're ready.
Hello, how are you?
Thank
I'm
you
Stella.
for joining us. Go right ahead.
I'm Stella Hargrove. And as council member, I get nervous during this time. I get nervous, and because a lot of times the things that I talk about, they seem real. It's PTSD, as diagnosed at the Veterans Affairs. So I get nervous. But I do want to tell you that my journey through domestic violence wasn't a short period. A lot of times when I tell my story, I tell a segment of what happened to me. My abuse was over a 5-year time period. So when people say, or I hear a lot of people say or tell other people, well, why do you stay there? Why do you stay there? A lot of times the reasons that we stay there is because everything has been taken away from us. We've been isolated, and our partner is in control of us. They control where we go, how we go, who we see, and who we speak to. And a lot of times even what phone calls we make. If I wanted to call my mother, he was sitting there right in front of me as I spoke to her. And the story that I want to tell this time is my husband, we both were in the military. We dated for a year before we got married. In that year's time that we dated, I never knew that my relationship would turn from a loving relationship to a domestic violence relationship. My husband was the sweetest guy. He was Soldier of the Year. First he won Soldier of the Quarter, then Soldier of the Year. We won a trip. During that time, we were stationed in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. So we won a trip to Nashville through his service of being Soldier of the Quarter. My husband taught me how to drive. And because he taught me how to drive, I thought, hey, I can afford a car. I'm going to go out and buy a car. So I told him I wanted to buy a car. He told me not to, but I went out anyway and bought a car. I bought that car. It was the first thing that I ever had that was all mine. And when I came home, he beat me for buying that car. He beat me for the reason of not listening to what he had to say. But I later realized that the other reason he beat me is because that was a way that I could escape. It was a way for me to go someplace when he didn't want me to go. He didn't have to take me. He didn't have to transport me there. So it took away some of his control. When my husband beat me, he would never beat me where people could see the scars. We both were in the military, so he would beat me in my body. I may have bruises on my arms, but we had long sleeve shirts and we could only roll them up so far. I realized that my husband, after they beat you, they say, oh, I'm so sorry, it'll never happen again. And they love you and they kiss you and you believe it's not going to happen again, but it does happen again. And my husband wanted to have a baby. And so I asked him, well, if you want to have a baby with me, why do you beat me? Why do you beat me? And his answer to me was, I beat you on your body because no one can see the bruises. At that point, that's when I knew that if I stayed in this relationship, and we were there 5 years, if I stayed in this relationship, eventually he would kill me. we went through the stages of, my husband would beat me for the smallest things, as if you go in the bathroom and you dry your hands on the hand towels and you didn't straighten the hand towels back up correctly. My husband would beat me if he wanted something special to eat and I didn't cook that something special, or if I went to the store because he wanted that and I didn't tell him that I was going to the grocery store. My husband, after we cooked breakfast, he was going to go play basketball with his lieutenant commander. And I said, okay, well, if you're going to go play basketball, then I'm going to run out and I'm going to, do some errands. I'm going to go to the store and I'm going to do this. His answer to me was, no, you're going to stay home. And I'm like, well, why do I have to stay home when I can go to the grocery store and get all of these things done while you're out? He didn't like that answer. So my husband beat me. And my husband beat me. He took my clothes off. My husband locked me in the garage with no clothes on, no anything, until he got back from playing basketball. So that was a couple of hours. While I'm in the garage, it's cold. What am I, where am I going to sit? There's nothing to wrap around me. And I just sit there until he got home. My escape from my husband came when his brother, who was also in the military, came to Kentucky on the way home to Florida, because that's where they were from. And we all were to go to Florida. When his brother came in, he saw me and he immediately knew that something was wrong. He asked me what was wrong and I didn't tell him at first. He finally got out of me by looking at me and seeing me that something was going on. I told him what his brother had been doing to me. I told him that I wanted to leave, that I had already gotten an apartment of my own that his brother knew nothing about. And he said that he would help me. So when his brother came home and the next day we were all to leave, I told him, I'm not really feeling too well. There's things that need to be done here at the house. I want to stay home. Let me stay home this time. He wanted me to go. His brother convinced him to let me stay home. When I stayed home, that was my escape. That was my escape because I had already gotten to the point and already understood that if I didn't leave, that this man was going to kill me. This man who said that he loved me, that I slept with every night, would kill me. And the reason that how I came to this point is he knew what he was doing. He knew that he could beat me in my body and no one would see. He knew that he had control of me, because if we went out, you would never know that we had a problem. You would think that we were the perfect couple. So once they left, I took nothing. I took absolutely nothing but the clothes and my military uniforms, and I left. I was able to, because I had saved a little money, to buy a bid for myself. When that Sunday came, that following Sunday came, he found me. It was late at night. My husband banged on the door. I knew it was him, and I hid in the closet until the banging stopped. He would do that every night for a week. I don't know if eventually someone called the police or what made him stop, but that was my escape. And a lot of times, we as females, when we go to a friend, a mother, or someone, they would tell you, oh, it's not going on. I don't believe that. Or, if it's all that bad, why don't you leave? We don't leave because we don't have the means to leave. We don't leave because when we go to people with help, they don't believe that you are really in need of help. Or they may say, well, you know, what goes on in the house stays, stays in the house. No, it doesn't stay in the house. We need for the people that we go to understand that we truly need help, that we truly are trapped in this relationship, and that we don't have control over the things we should have control over. We may not have control over our money. We may not have control over when we make those phone calls or where we go and how long and when we leave. We may have a certain time that we should be back in that home. So I am asking that if someone comes to you, or if you see someone that you know that's in an abusive relationship, to listen, because a lot of times we just need you to listen and let us work out how it's going to work. Some of us may have children, and we don't want to leave our children in that home. Or if we go to a shelter, that shelter may serve women, but not, boys and men. And we don't want to leave our sons in that relationship. So I just ask that you have a little heart for us, give us the time that we need, and help us if we come to you for help. Thank you.
Man, that is so powerful, Stella. I so appreciate you being willing to speak up and be public with your story. It reached me. And, there's so many people who need the advice you give. It's not just to the people who are being abused, but for those of us who just know someone who needs help and knows the first step is to listen. And then the second step is to believe. So thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Sisters for Sisters is a 501c3 organization that since 1999 has focused on empowering women. Sisters for Sisters is there for women who need food, housing, emotional support, or a way out of domestic violence. Sisters for Sisters are also there for their children, hosting backpack giveaways and clothing drives for them. They are there for those who have HIV/AIDS. They do so much. And Carolyn White Washington is the executive director for Sisters for Sisters. When Carolyn calls, we all are compelled to answer and pitch in. Carolyn?
Well, good afternoon or good morning to everyone. First of all, I want to commend Councilmember Ivey for this wonderful conversation, because truly domestic violence extends outside of October, which is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I am also very, very thankful to Sister Stella, who shared that very, very impactful testimony, and I commend her for her courage, for sharing, and in all of her words were right on point. Thank you so much for sharing that great word for all of us. My name is Dr. Carolyn White Washington, and I am a community advocate against domestic and sexual violence, and founder and visionary of Sisters for Sisters Incorporated, a 22-year nonprofit organization founded right here in Prince George's County, Maryland. As many of you all know, every 9 seconds a woman is assaulted. Since COVID-19, domestic violence has become a pandemic within a pandemic, leaving many women and children vulnerable to more abuse and violence during this quarantine. Nationwide, record numbers of calls are being received from individuals and families impacted by domestic violence. Domestic violence impacts women and girls from all social, economic, ethnic, and religious groups. It does not discriminate. Anybody can actually be a victim, survivor, overcomer, impacted by domestic violence. Sisters for Sisters provides a safe, sacred space where sisters can share, succeed, and soar. This Valentine's Day, it's our prayer that you will have the courage to give yourself the love you most deserve, and that is loving you. We do our best to remind women that they deserve to live their best life. As a community, we are dedicated to helping end domestic violence from the various faith-based organizations that's in our community, as well as sororities and fraternities. We are in this together. And I want to encourage all of you that are in an organization or even individuals to lend a hand. There is so much to be done. There is so much work to be done. Violence in the home results in violence in our community. Most times when you hear about a story of violence in the community, a shooting or any kind of violence, you notice that it stemmed from something that happened in the home, that there was abuse in the home. So together, we're just asking the community to do our part. Over the years, we've been committed to helping women in our community become educated while assisting them on escaping and providing resources to help on this journey. That would include transportation to move out of town. That would include emergency housing to a weekend view at a hotel. That would also include emergency food, baby products, Pampers, clothing. That most of all includes hope, reminding the survivor or victim that it's not their fault. Most of all, they are not alone. Every 9 seconds, a woman is assaulted, and 1.3 million women are assaulted annually. But men are also abused, and we acknowledge that. We understand that there's still a way to be safe, even during this pandemic, when there seems to be limited access and resources. Resources are available. February is actually Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. This annual month-long push focuses on advocacy and education to stop dating abuse before it starts. If we start early, then we can conquer some of the issues of women not understanding their worth. Roughly 1.5 million high school boys and girls admit to being hit or physically harmed in the last year by someone they are romantically involved with. 1 in 3 young people will be in an abusive or unhealthy relationship. Those numbers are startling. We must teach our youth early the signs of abuse. The key to domestic violence prevention is education, awareness, and self-love. Knowing your worth this Valentine's Day and beyond is critical to healthy love with care, and healthy relationship involves self-empowerment. Everyone deserves a healthy, loving relationship. As we approach Valentine's Day 2021, it is our hope and prayer that women and men as well will take a healthy approach at what love looks like. This is the key to finding the love you deserve and desire. First of all, what does love not look like? Hitting, slapping, cursing, threatening, stalking, jealousy, isolation, withholding affection, controlling, manipulation, obsessed with knowing where you are all the time. That is not cute. That is dangerous. Blowing up your cell phone, that is not affection. That is an issue. Hitting your pets, blowing up, like I said, your cell phone or social media, isolating you from your family or friends, financial and spiritual manipulation. That is not love. But love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not boast, nor is it proud. It does not dishonor one another. It is not self-seeking. It keeps no record of wrong. Love does not dwell in evil, but rejoices in truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always preserves. This is what love looks like. If you or someone you know is a victim of domestic violence, please know no one is judging you. No one is blaming you. This can happen to anybody, anywhere, and anytime. Please, if you need help and if you are experiencing or even wondering if you are a victim of domestic violence, we encourage you to call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7253 or call your sister. We are very confidential. We will give you some insight. We will partner you with a sister who has overcome and will help you to guide you through the process. Please don't try to pick up and leave if you are in an abusive relationship. It takes planning. We have to have a safety plan to keep you and your children safe. It is our prayer that together we can end domestic violence as we stand up, speak up, and show up to eradicate this violence in our community and in our homes. Thank you.
Carolyn, you are awesome. And I so appreciate you and what Sisters for Sisters does every day. You know, I know that people call you all the time and say, I need help, I need a hotel room, you know, I need food, whatever it is, and you're always willing to step up. So really appreciate you. Thank you. Aisha Braveboy is the state's attorney for Prince George's County, and she was elected to that position in 2018. I met her back in 2006 when we were both running for a seat in the Maryland House of Delegates, and we served together there for 8 years. Ms. Braveboy served as chair of the Maryland Legislative Black Caucus. Her motto for the state's attorney's office under her administration is that crime is personal, personal to the victim, personal to the community, and personal to the state's attorney's office. I believe somebody has their microphone on, so I just want to mention that you should mute if you were not me or Aisha Braveboy, who's about to speak. Since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, Ms. Braveboy has been at the forefront with effective solutions to prevent the spread of the virus and support the community. She was the first in the state and led the nation in implementing Operation Safe Release, which has been proactive way of reducing the spread of the coronavirus in the jail. Through this initiative, her office and criminal justice partners have safely and judiciously reduced the inmate population to prevent a public health crisis in the facility and community. In addition, Ms. Braveboy continues to work with nonprofits and county agencies to ensure that victims of abuse and domestic violence receive the resources and support they need during the pandemic. Last year, she put her legislative and criminal justice skills together and implemented a county-wide initiative in the state's attorney's office that now enables Prince George's law enforcement, prosecutors, and medical workers to better help domestic violence survivors who have been strangled or choked. This is important. It can take days, weeks, or even months for the damage done by strangulation to manifest itself, and her initiative is to both help the sufferers and to hold those responsible accountable. This program is using new technology and advanced photography to detect and document evidence of strangulation that might otherwise be invisible to the naked eye. Because of this, some violent abusers will no longer escape prosecution. We are all better off because of her efforts, and we're all grateful to her. It's my pleasure to introduce to you the state's attorney for Prince George's County, Aisha Braveboy.
Well, thank you so much, and good morning to my wonderful friend and colleague, Councilwoman Jolene Ivey, and to all of you who are with us at this powerful event. With Valentine's Day just around the corner, we're all talking about love. But it's important to know, as the Councilwoman mentioned, that loving relationships should not be hurtful, harmful, or abusive. So if you know someone who is in an abusive relationship, or if you are that person, there are resources in the county that can assist you. And I can tell you personally, I am committed to assisting victims of violence and survivors. I know, and I don't want to speak for the Councilwoman, but I know that it's within her heart to do so as well, because she wouldn't have this type of forum if that was not her intention. So really, for those of you out there today, if any of you have experienced violence or are currently experiencing violence, please reach out to us. We are here as public servants for you. This is an event where we honor our survivors, and you heard from a magnificent survivor, Stella Hargrove, who assisted me and went to Annapolis and also testified on the legislation that I'll talk about very shortly. Survivor stories are important because it makes it real. We're not just talking about statistics, we're talking about people. And Carolyn Washington, founder of Sisters for Sisters, thank you. You provide a resource that I can't provide, because sometimes people don't want to come to law enforcement, but they need help and they feel like they can come to you. And so that's really important. So thank you so much for being a resource in our community. I will now share a PowerPoint presentation. So I'm going to share my screen so that you all can see it. So just give me one moment. Okay. Oh, let me see if I can go back. I can't go back. Sorry. Let me get through this. I'll go back. Okay. Okay. So it is an honor and privilege to present this or make this presentation this morning on some of the work that our office is doing, especially around strangulation. So first, I want to define strangulation. Strangulation is defined as the external application of pressure to the neck, resulting in the loss of consciousness. Or it can also be defined as external pressure to the neck that blocks the airflow, blood flow, or both. So as was mentioned, in 2020, we went to Annapolis to pass a bill to make strangulation a first-degree felony offense. And we were successful in doing that. And I want to thank all of our partners here, because most of you supported this legislation. It was like the 10th year that this legislation had been before the General Assembly, but this was the first year that the state's attorney's office in Prince George's County took the lead. And we had Prince Georgians come down to testify, and we presented a very strong case, and we were grateful that the committee saw fit to pass this bill, and it was passed, I think, almost unanimously by the General Assembly. Statistics indicate that strangulation is one of the most lethal forms of domestic violence. A victim of strangulation is 7 times more likely to end up being a victim of homicide. That's why we really needed to focus on this issue of strangulation. So as was mentioned, strangulation used to really be considered a second-degree assault. And I want to just share with you some of the other things that are considered quote-unquote second-degree assaults. Causing offensive physical contact, maybe pushing someone, attempting to cause offensive physical contact. So not necessarily engaging in the contact, but attempting to. That's also considered a second-degree assault. Or an intent to frighten, intentionally frightening someone with immediate physical contact. That is considered second-degree assault. Strangulation was prosecuted just like all of these other offenses. And not that these offenses are not important and significant, but these offenses don't lead to death in the way that strangulation led to death. And that is why we convinced the legislature to enhance the penalties for strangulation. And so current law, as of October 1st, 2020, strangulation is now a part of the first-degree assault statute. So that's Maryland Criminal Law 3-202. And it now states a person may not intentionally cause or attempt to cause serious physical injury to another. A person cannot commit an assault with a firearm, and a person may not commit an assault by intentionally strangling another. So this was the most appropriate place in our laws to place strangulation. And so I hope that you can see why we wanted to move it out of second degree into first degree. So I thought it was important to just talk about some cases that our office had where this new strangulation law would have been effective. So I'm going to talk to you about a case that occurred in November of 2018. Police responded to the victim's residence where she had been dropped off by the defendant, who was her ex-boyfriend. Once there, the victim reported that the defendant had taken her to District Heights Municipal Building, forced her to perform oral sex to the point that she vomited. The victim also advised that the defendant strangled her until she was unconscious or she was losing consciousness and forced her to have vaginal sex. The victim was taken to the hospital where a sexual assault exam was performed. The victim had scratches and swelling around her neck that was consistent with strangulation. And she also had vaginal tears and scarring consistent, obviously, with forced intercourse. The defendant ended up pleading to the second-degree rape under the, the defendant pled to second-degree rape. But under the new law, we could have charged a first-degree felony assault, which carries 25 years. And so what we're saying in this case is that, yes, we were able to hold him accountable for the rape itself, but she was also strangled. She was also assaulted. And we want to be able to hold abusers fully accountable for every crime they commit against their victim. And this is our victim or survivor here. And you can see some of the injuries that she suffered as a result of the strangulation, the swelling around her neck here. You can see some of the scarring and swelling in this photo, as well as in this photo. Additionally, in May of 2019, a defendant went to speak to a victim about their relationship. During the course of the conversation, the victim told the defendant she did not want to be with him. The defendant became upset and punched the victim in her face. The victim was also strangled. She went to the hospital and was treated for her injuries. Now, the defendant, we were actually able to secure conviction in that case, but it was for second-degree assault, which carries up to 10 years in prison. And so in that case, the defendant will be held accountable, but the penalties that he's facing is only up to 10 years. Under the new law, we could have asked for up to 25 years. So that's the difference. And that's why it was important for us to change the law. Methods of strangulation, it could be manual, if you're done with an individual's hands, or it could be ligature. Someone can be strangled with a belt, with a scarf, with wire, any type of object that can constrict your blood flow and airflow. Fewer than 50% of strangulation victims have observable injuries. And I know that we have a guest from Prince George's Hospital Center, so I won't go into great detail on the advances in technology that allow us to be able to show actual injuries to the victim, but just to observe them with the naked eye, oftentimes we are unable to see the injuries. And so if you're just using a regular camera to photograph the victim, that may not be adequate in terms of prosecuting the case and proving beyond a reasonable doubt that an individual was in fact strangled. But even if the injuries are not visible, they can still be life-threatening. days, weeks, months, or even years after the strangulation event. And I'll let the medical professionals get more involved in that. And here's another picture of strangulation victim. Sometimes they're injuries, sometimes they're not. But in both cases, the impacts are just as deadly. Some of the injuries that can occur as a result of strangulation are physical. Victims of strangulation are more likely to have strokes, brain damage, difficult swallowing or breathing, ear pain, vision change, tongue swelling, bloodshot eyes, multi-system organ failure, just a variety of issues that can occur when someone is strangled. And psychologically, as Ms. Hargrove mentioned, PTSD, depression, suicidal ideation, memory problems, nightmares, and anxiety and stress. These are all injuries that result from strangulation, and that's why we're focusing on them. And this is just a infographic that explains a little bit more in detail some of the signs of strangulation. So if you know someone who you believe might be a victim, and you see that they have redness around the eyes or swelling around the neck, I mean, these could be signs that they are a victim of strangulation. And having those uncomfortable but necessary conversations with our friends and our relatives and our coworkers can save their life. So we must observe each other and look for these signs, because we could, in fact, help someone get out of a very dangerous and deadly situation. We developed, and I know that Councilwoman Ivey was very excited about this, and I'm very pleased also. Our office took the initiative because of the tragedies that we've seen, because of the impact of strangulation. My office developed a new interagency strangulation protocol. This protocol was developed in collaboration with other law enforcement agencies. So I want to thank our sheriff, our police department, as well as fire, EMS, and other first responders, as well as our healthcare professionals, the folks at Prince George's Hospital Center, and various social service organizations. This new protocol adopts the appropriate screening, documentation, prosecution, and treatment of strangulation. By improving the detection and response to domestic violence incidents that involve strangulation, Prince George's County can now better assist victims and hold offenders fully accountable for their serious criminal acts. So this is really kind of an outline or a flow of the strangulation protocol. When 911 is contacted and it's a domestic violence call, those dispatchers will ask, and operators will ask, whether an individual was choked. Were you choked? Were you strangled? That information is critical, because when the first responder arrives, which is the next part the next box you see, when that first responder arrives, then they will know whether or not that individual needs medical assistance. And so first responders are also trained to ask the appropriate questions. And if someone indicates that they were strangled, then they will take them to Prince George's Hospital for the appropriate medical aid, because that's really important. And then there is a follow-up investigation that is done. Our office is contacted when we have these strangulation cases, and we help to direct how the investigation should unfold, so that we ensure that we have everything we need in order to move forward with the prosecution. And then and in terms of how it's charged by police officers, we're asking that police charge with the first degree felony assault, so that we have a better opportunity to keep those abusers in jail pending their trial. And then when it comes to prosecution, we move forward with the first degree felony under the strangulation theory. And we work along with our medical partners as well as our law enforcement partners to develop and put together a successful case. Now, can we get 100% outcomes? Well, obviously that's not practical, or it's not reasonable to think that you're going to win every single case. But what I can say is that if we have the evidence and we have the cooperation, we have a better chance of, and we have some excellent prosecutors in our Special Victims and Family Violence Unit that works really hard for our victims every single day. We have a much stronger chance of holding the abuser accountable and getting justice for our victims. So this protocol has now been in place since October. We are working really hard. We have several cases that we have charged under this new theory. Now, we haven't had jury trials just yet because of the pandemic, but as we move forward, we are expecting successful outcomes to these strangulation cases. And unfortunately, they have increased during the pandemic. At one point, we were seeing 7 new strangulation cases a week, which was really a huge increase for our office, which means that there was a lot of pain going on in our communities. So again, our partners are 911 Communications, Fire EMS, Prince George's Hospital Center, the Sheriff's Department, and the Police Department. And you know what I think we need to add to this? You, the community, because you all will help us identify our victims and assist us as we move forward to seeking justice for our entire community. So there's a big call to action here. That's why we want to talk about this issue as much as we can, because the public needs to know about the dangers of strangulation. And for your friends and family members who are not here today, we want you to pass along this information to them. And then if you are a victim, be aware of this protocol. You can also call the hospital. If you don't want to get the police involved, that's your decision. We respect the decisions of our victims. But get and seek medical attention, because you never know the long-lasting effects that this act can have on you as an individual. We want everyone to live a quality life. There's just 2 pieces of legislation I just wanted to mention very quickly that we're working on this year that we would love to have the Councilwoman support for, as well as all of you. One of the bills is called the Continuing Course of Abuse Against Children, and it's House Bill 277. It is designed to protect our most vulnerable victims, our children. Too often our children are victims of repeated child abuse. And although they receive a medical diagnosis of torture, each individual episode of abuse does not create the life-threatening injury or loss of impairment of an organ that is currently required to meet the first-degree child abuse statute. And so those cases, even though they are horrific, are not charged under the first-degree felony abuse statute. So this bill that we're working on states that anyone who commits 3 or more acts of child abuse may be charged with the first-degree child abuse as a continuing course of abuse under that theory. And we believe that's really important because I can't tell you the heartbreaking stories of how people treat their children. It's mind-blowing, but we have to protect these children and we have to hold their abusers accountable. And then the last bill I'll mention is House Bill 223. And this bill is designed to close the loophole for individuals who exercise power and supervision over our children and use that position to engage in sexual acts with children prior to them reaching adulthood. Now, the age of consent in Maryland is 16. The current law allows for the state to charge an employee of a school that the victim attends if that individual engages in sexual contact with a victim under the age of 18. So under the current law, it only applies to employees of a school. However, it does not apply to individuals not associated with a school that may be in a position of authority, like a traveling sports coach or music teacher or youth group leader, or someone who, may be in a mentoring relationship and has some type of authority or supervision over that individual. And they are exploiting our young boys and girls. And so we think that this loophole needs to be closed. And so we're working actively on this law as well. And I figured that these two pieces of legislation would be of interest to you and, of course, our wonderful Councilwoman Jolene Ivey. So that's all I have for you all today. And I thank you again, Councilwoman, for allowing me to speak. And thank you so much for being a champion for our community, especially our victims of domestic violence.
No, of course. And thank you. You were right. I was really excited when I first heard about what you had done and this strangulation protocol and this not a new law, but basically just a new classification of the law so that this kind of thing, strangulation, is taken more seriously and gets more punishment because it's bad. So thank you for that. You're always there to lead the fight on legislation particularly, and I appreciate that because it really does change people's lives. And next, we're going to talk to someone from Prince George's Hospital, University of Maryland, Capital Region Health, the new name of Prince George's Hospital Center. It's hard for me to make the switch, having grown up in this area, is home to the only designated sexual assault center in Prince George's County and is the state leader in comprehensive domestic violence and sexual assault intervention. The Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Center helps women recognize, deal with, and heal from intimate partner violence and sexual assault. The center also helps survivors with medical, legal, and emotional support in a private and confidential medical setting. Their trained counselors offer services to all victims and survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking, regardless of race, color, religion, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, or economic status. They also counsel families, friends, and partners to help everyone through the healing process. Sharon Rogers is the Forensic Nurse Examiner Coordinator at the University of Maryland Sexual Assault Center. They've also been at the forefront of implementing the strangulation protocols that the state's attorney was just talking about. I'm so glad Ms. Rogers is able to join us today. Ms. Rogers? If you could unmute yourself.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sharon Rogers. I am the Forensic Nursing Coordinator here at University of Maryland Domestic Violence Sexual Assault Center, Capital Region Health. It is a very long name for us to remember. And this is my friend, Mercy. Mercy is our friend who assists us in simulating the act of strangulation with our clients who report the act of strangulation. Strangulation is one indicator of violence escalation that poses an increased risk of serious morbidity and mortality in cases of intimate partner violence. Studies indicate that 23 to 68% of female domestic violence victims will experience at least one strangulation-related incident at the hands of their abusive partner during their lifetime. In addition, women who experience intimate partner sexual violence also experience strangulation as a co-occurring issue, meaning it happens over and over again, and it continues to escalate unless the victim seeks out assistance through law enforcement, through hospital centers, or centers such as ours at the Domestic Violence Sexual Assault Center. It's actually coincidental because the pictures earlier in the that Ms. Braveboy showed are an exam that I myself did. I saw that victim myself and did that exam. And the details of the exam were pretty horrific. A lot of our victims present with lethal conditions such as a fractured trachea, carotid aneurysm, and a cerebral artery blockage. I actually had one victim at one time who actually died 6 months later from a carotid aneurysm that she sustained from a brutal strangulation from her attacker. It was an ex-boyfriend. The majority of the cases that we see, however, are ligature marks, scratches, bruising, that sort of thing. However, as State's Attorney Braveboy said, they do have the potential for more serious effects. And so the clients really, really, really need to be encouraged to report and seek out immediate medical evaluation. As I said, if they don't, the sexual violence will just continue to escalate. In 2019, we did approximately 6 strangulation exams. That doubled, tripled in 2020 to 24 exams, some of them associated with sexual violence. We assumed it was probably due to COVID and the victim probably being isolated with their attacker. Thus far in 2021, we have already done 6 strangulation exams, and we're only gotten through mid-February. We have partnered with the PG County State's Attorney's Office. We are committed to doing this work and helping these victims seek a resolution to their problem. Please contact us if you know anyone on our crisis hotlines, because as I said, the violence will continue to escalate if these women aren't helped. Thank you for asking me to be here today. In addition to Mercy, I would like to show you our camera that we use. This is our Cortex Flow. I don't know if anybody can see it. This is the state-of-the-art forensic photography that we use for all of our forensic exams, sexual assault and domestic violence exams. And it does a wonderful job in assisting the state's attorneys in seeking justice for our victims. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's, you know, some of the things that we've had to hear about today are hard. They're hard to see, they're hard to hear about. And it's a lot harder, of course, to be the victim, to be the person who is experiencing these things. So thank you so much, each of you, for coming to speak today. I don't know if any of you have any last words. State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy, did you want to have a last word?
Well, thank you very much. I see that the PowerPoint was shared. I was going to say, I think there was a request for the PowerPoint presentation. So wonderful that you all were able to share it. No, just that, you know, every year and every month, this issue needs to be discussed. And the fact that you understand that, especially during this time of the year, that we should really be talking about it, because we have to really understand what love truly is.
Right.
I just think it is so powerful, and I want to thank you, Councilwoman, for inviting me.
No, thank you. And Dr. Washington, any last words? Just remember to unmute.
Well, I agree with the state's attorney. This is a 24/7 everyday conversation. And as our sister Sharon Rogers has shared, and you, the numbers are increasing dramatically. I cannot tell you how many calls we're getting, but we want all the women and men that are victims to know that love doesn't hurt. Take care and be safe, not just safe from the pandemic, but safe from domestic violence.
No, absolutely. And Councilmember Hargrove, your story was so powerful. Do you have something more you'd like to add?
Yes, I do. I'd like to thank you, of course, for having this, because it is so very important for us to be able to share. Because what I found out is through my sharing, it does help other young ladies. To State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy, I love her to death. I really do. I love both of you to death. You know, I should say to life. The bill of strangulation was something that was truly needed. A lot of times, as you saw, the bruises around your neck, they are unseen and you cannot see them. I want to thank you guys for having this, both Councilmember Jolene Ivey and Aisha, I say Aisha Braveboy, State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy, because these platforms are very important for, like you said, the community to hear, because a lot of people suffer in silence. No one knew my story, but my husband's brother, until the two of you, like you said, ran for office, and you both were there the first time I told my story. That was the first time that I told my story, and it was because Council Member Aisha Saunders wanted to have a domestic violence program, but she was afraid that no one would share their story. And I told her I would share my story. And that was the first time. So it's very important for everyone to understand that we don't tell our secrets, because they are. We are ashamed. We're afraid. We're afraid that our partners may find out. So I ask that you please be there to continue to put on events like this. And for those of you who are listening, that if you have a friend or sister or brother who may come to you, be prepared to listen and give a hand if you can. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you. And thank you all who came today to watch and to listen. We'll be emailing out to everyone who registered the video for today, as well as some additional supports that might be helpful for you in helping your friends and family and yourself if you suffer from this. So happy Valentine's Day, everyone. After all of that gloom and doom, I do hope that everybody is going to stay safe, maybe get some and snuggle at home with whoever you love, and it might just be you, and love yourself. So thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.